Hello, everybody. Here we are, March 11th, 2025. Oh, my goodness gracious. Can you feel the intensity of this week's total lunar eclipse? It is bonkers out there. I'm sure if you've been paying any kind of attention to news headlines, you will realize that it's like you turn away for a moment and you see all different kinds of things happening. It's like whiplash with all the news headlines right now. So if you're new to my work, welcome. I am Dallisa Hocking, a fifth generation psychic medium. I make a lot of predictions about the United States, about the world. I get a lot of downloads. I am clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient, which means I see, I hear, I feel, and I bring you my weekly show every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, live. Welcome in everyone that's here joining us. If you are watching this live stream and you are commenting, you will notice that here on my little lucky jar, a bauble will go inside of that jar. I will pull a winner at the end of today's live stream, and they will win a 12-month personalized tarot report. So today's episode is going to be very interesting. So a couple times a year, we have what you could refer to as eclipse season. We have one coming up this week we're going to talk about in a minute. We have one coming up the end of March. And I can absolutely tell you without a doubt that I, as somebody as a psychic medium, I'm sure a lot of you out there are feeling the energy, and maybe the most intensely you felt it in a long time or ever. So hello, welcome in. Yeah, drop in the comments where you are watching us from today. So if you are new to this format, I will be bringing an awesome astrologer and tarot card reader onto the show here in just a moment. She's actually joining us from outside of Vienna. So that's going to be fun, get a take on what she's seeing and sensing. We have some news headlines we're going to go through. And when we go through the news headlines, it's more to look at how that story pertains to the astrology that's happening now. So we'll connect the dots between news headlines and astrology. She's also going to be pulling some cards for us. We're going to take a look at the energy and see what comes out in the cards. And I'm excited to introduce you to her. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and then we'll jump right into it. So Larisa Vasile, I know I'm going to say this wrong, so I'm going to have her say it again here in a moment. Originally from Transylvania, Romania, so really intrigued by that. And she specializes in astrocartography. So if you're not familiar with that, what that is, I tell my clients that are like looking to move somewhere, like they're thinking about relocating, maybe for a job or maybe for their retirement. I'm like, I don't know where I should live. I'm always like, talk to a good astrologer that does astrocartography. So Larisa specializes in that. So it's cool to introduce her to you, and you can learn more about her work. She also loves psychology, and I appreciate that because I think there's a lot to uncover when you're looking at astrology and cards and the energy of the world. Her website is SaturnRevolution.com, SaturnRevolution.com. And as always, to find anything having to do with my work, you go to spiritandspark.com. It's right there on your screen. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring Larisa on to our beautiful show here today. Say hello to everybody.
Hello, hi, nice to meet you guys. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having me here today. Yeah, I'm Larisa Vasile. That was like pretty good. Thank you.
I try, but as soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, oh, I butchered that. I totally butchered that. So thank you for your kindness.
And yeah, like all that she said, like it's right? Like I'm from Transylvania, Romania, and I'm tuning in right now from, I'm not very far from Vienna, if you're aware with that. It's a little bit late here, but I'm a night owl, so it's like the perfect time when I'm getting like super energized, and especially when I talk about astrology, like I'm super pumped up. So I'm very excited, and the type of astrology that I do is more intuitive, in the sense that I do like to do interpretations, and also trust my God when I do them. So it's not just like looking at the knowledge, but also using my intuition. So I'm really happy to see, what we're gonna dive into today when it comes to the eclipse this week.
Yeah. So thank you for telling us a bit more about where you're at, where you're from. So being an intuitive astrologer, and here we are in a week where we have a total lunar eclipse that's going to show up in the sign of Virgo. What are you sensing? How kind of get it all? If they look at like that 9 o'clock, if we think of it as a clock, we have a bunch of planets in Pisces and in Aries, but we have that total lunar eclipse in Virgo that's going to come up. So what do you get with the vibe? Like, what are you sensing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first of all, looking at the chart right now, we can see that the moon is still in Leo, right? So that is why we're having like our emotions are being a little bit highlighted now. As we're heading into eclipse, we're also kind of feeling it a little bit stronger, because Leo is a little bit more bold in energy. So our emotions are almost like dramatized, and there can be this energy right now these days of a little bit like a snapping energy, of like maybe an energy where the ego kind of takes the scene, and we're like without realizing this fiery side of us gets in the way. But then as we go towards Virgo, we lean more towards our body, because Virgo is very connected to our body. Virgo is very connected to how we feel within our body. So I feel that first of all, this eclipse is going to bring a lot of connection with our body. So if we feel like we are not connected to our body this week, Virgo eclipse is definitely going to push us to do that, because of the fact that it's needing some kind of release. So if you've had like symptoms, like I'm talking about this when it comes to Virgo, I have a Virgo moon, by the way, so I'm super targeted by this energy this week. And if you've had, I don't know, headaches, or if you've had like specific health things coming up recently, it's really important to start to observe those, because it could be that they are kind of like indicators of maybe some stress that has been like piled up, or maybe some other like energies or emotions that are stored within your body that kind of are needing a release. And I feel that this Virgo full moon is going to be like a perfect time to release all of those energies, that have been pent up. So that's like the first thing that I'm seeing when it comes to that. Also, I feel that since Virgo is ruled by Mercury, Mercury has to do with communication. It's also connected to our mind. It's connected to the way we see things. So I feel that maybe when it comes to our perspectives, there's going to be some sort of a perspective change. Even, globally, there can be like some kind of news that comes up, some kind of truth that comes up as well, because Virgo, being ruled by Mercury, it can really relate to like some truths or messages or news, that can be coming up in this area, maybe in the health area, but also like maybe mental health as well. And I feel that another theme of this is letting go of a habit that maybe is not really good for us. This is something that I recommend doing around this time. Like it's a really good eclipse to kind of release something, because it's the first eclipse on that cycle of the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo. This makes total sense with how I'm feeling. Yeah. We're all feeling it.
Yes. Okay. So let me ask you a question then. So you've been talking about Virgo and like being in our body and like feeling this intensity. And so if we're feeling that intensity, which I've been seeing it in the world, I've seen examples of this play out, feels like the intensity just keeps going up and up and up. And so would you recommend then a good way of using this energy is if you're feeling that intensity, like go on a jog or go for a walk or go do a yoga class or like a kickboxing class, do you think that moving the body to get the energy out would be beneficial?
I think so, but also with some, it's still an eclipse, and this eclipse is also going to be aspecting Uranus, which is a little bit more like, it can be surprising. So I do recommend that, but something more gentle. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend, like doing like the most intense workout, like this week, like, but I do see that definitely our body is kind of like calling us to release a lot of these things. So the best way to listen to it is through exercise, maybe yoga, maybe something, more gentle, maybe swimming, for example, going for walks, running, or things like that. So yeah, definitely that would be good.
And with it being in Virgo this week, that would mean that the mutable signs, anybody that has Sun, Moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus, or sensitive angles in Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, and Gemini would probably feel this the most. Is there anything I'm leaving out with that, or any other people that should be on the lookout for this?
Yeah, so definitely, the mutable signs, as you mentioned, the ones that you mentioned are targeted with this energy. I also feel that Gemini energy can be targeted because of the fact that, this is very heavy, it is ruled by Mercury, which is also ruling Gemini. So I feel that it kind of like, yeah, definitely, it is kind of like one of the most impacted signs. And then other than that, Uranus right now is in Taurus, which is making an aspect to the eclipse. So probably, people that also have like a planet in Taurus as well. But this, I do personally like this aspect because it is in a trine with the eclipse. So it's not necessarily like a very harsh aspect, which means that there is this sense of like, maybe some sort of a surprising energy that comes up from this eclipse that gives us, I don't know, some sort of like a revelation, so it can be in the form of a revelation, and revelations sometimes they can be, like surprising, but they're not always necessarily like in the like negative. Although maybe right now, since after the eclipse Mercury also goes retrograde, like the next day exactly, I feel that this revelation initially can come in the form of like maybe a setback, or it can feel like a setback, but in reality, Mercury retrograde in itself feels like a setback, also being the ruler of the eclipse. But it is also all about going through that process of Mercury retrograde, and then when we're out of that, what do we learn? What did we learn? So it's a lot about like leading us towards a lot of like really nice insights that we're going to learn about ourselves in connection to all of these Virgo themes that I talked about, but also just in connection to maybe the world, maybe the way that we navigate the energies in general, the way that we see the world, because Mercury is all about perspectives as well.
Yeah, Vanessa, I feel you. All my big three are mutable as well. So yeah, anybody can take a look at their chart, or you can, link up with Larisa on SaturnRevolution.com and, learn more about your astrology and all that good stuff. But yeah, we have people joining from all over the world today, so it's a lot of fun. We have a good day from New Zealand. I love that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Okay. So when I showed that chart a minute ago, we saw that there's a lot going on in Pisces and Aries.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a partial solar eclipse coming up in Aries at the end of the month, end of March. So when I think about Aries energy and we feel this intensity ratcheting up, and we know Neptune's going to be going into Aries. And for people that don't understand astrology, it's totally fine. We're hopefully breaking it down for you in a way that helps you work with what's happening. But do you feel like this energy intensity is going to get higher or worse or more volatility as Neptune's going into Aries and some of the planets and the sun go into, like, what are you feeling with the Aries vibe shift?
Mm-hmm. So I do feel that right now we are kind of in the peak, and March as of like 2025 is the most intense month, right? So that's why it feels this way. Like this month was created to feel this way almost. So I don't know if we're having like a more intense, not necessarily that we are not going to have intensity later on throughout the year, but I feel like now it's like consecutive, like it's not ending. It just feels like it's building up to something, right? So it's not necessarily an intensity that feels like it's going to have like a, it feels like it's building up to something. And definitely like Aries energy has to do with that. Like Aries is all about like, just, when everything, like when we put so many planets in the hands of Aries, and we're like Aries, which is like the first zodiac of the, the wheel. And we're like, okay, Aries, you should handle, the state of the world or the state of everything. It feels a little bit like, because Aries has this childlike energy to it, so it feels a little bit like, wait, you have to be a little bit careful with what you're doing. And especially I feel that if you're someone that has this need to have control, or has this need to kind of like have a grasp on things, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to kind of like navigate this energy. But it's kind of almost like an opening up to, okay, we also have to kind of go along this Aries path of like taking things as we, I feel like we're going to connect a lot more with our instinct. We're going to be much more connected to like just knowing when to act, knowing what to do. But I feel like there's definitely going to be some action that could be happening towards the end of this eclipse, towards the Aries eclipse at the end of the month. And this Aries eclipse is actually the ending of a cycle of Aries eclipses that we've had like since almost like 2 years, 2023. So this means that it's definitely been building up to this energy at the end of the month, which can feel like almost like a rage that's being kind of like expressed, or some actions that are being taken that, feel very instinctive, I would say, or that they feel like, wait, weren't you thinking like when you make that decision, and so on. But what I feel that we should be looking forward to, and then Neptune also going into Aries is also a little bit like, we're taking the delusion of Neptune and then we're pairing it with Aries, which is more about like action taking. And there's like a blend of like this imagination and action thinking, and it almost feels like we don't know exactly where we're going. And I think someone also mentioned in the comments that like, I feel like I'm not here or something like that I saw. And that this is exactly the feeling right now, because we are also at the last degrees of Neptune being in Pisces, and Pisces has this energy of delusion. So right now it's being like super, brought forward, and we're feeling a little bit like high, like even if like it just feels like this kind of intensity or energy, it can just feel in the air. But that's why I do feel that this Virgo eclipse can be really grounded if we find the right tools. And then since I'm a Capricorn rising, I'm ruled by Saturn. I really love Saturn, as you can see my my Instagram page name and everything. I'm also an Aquarius, so like I'm super Saturn ruled. I have like 6 planets, 3 of them in Aquarius, 3 of them in Capricorn, so all in the first house. So I have like a first house stellium. Yeah. So I know Saturn energy, and I am kind of putting my fate in Saturn energy. So when Saturn is going to go into Aries, I feel like this is going to happen towards the end of May. So, Neptune will go in Aries at the end of March. And then until the end of May, it can feel a little bit like things are let loose, or like there's, like people are just playing with things, like even maybe people that are in power, it can feel like they're trying to push some buttons or something. But then once Saturn goes in Aries in May, it feels like there's some sort of a restriction, that it's almost like, the adult coming in and being like, you need to like, stop, like you need to have some rules. So I do really feel that at the beginning it can feel a little bit chaotic, but then it's going to get very structured. And I do like the energy of the summertime and so on. Like this is the most intense month, I would say.
Okay, so we know we have a lot of intensity this month. It'll probably leak over in some ways to April. Mm-hmm. But then I like what you're saying about the summer feeling more structured and having some rules. Because I know I see a lot of it in my community and the people around me, that it feels like the energy is chaotic and just kind of spinning. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are feeling uneasy about it, and they have a lot of fear about it because they feel like everything is just up in the air. So it sounds like the remembrance that everything is temporary, mm-hmm. and that where we're at today and that chaotic feeling that we may have, and that's different for everyone in different parts of the world, but that eventually we do start getting that structure back. Because I've talked about it before, but how it reminds me of the Tower card in tarot, and like how it all just burns down. And then that Pluto and Aquarius to me is like, oh, the power to the people, and the people deciding what do we want and what does this look like and how are we going to rebuild this. But Pluto and Aquarius is a very long transit. And so for me, it feels psychically like this is going to be a long process to have all of these things rebuilt and redone. But I think it's just that knowing that everything is temporary. Does that make sense? Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, definitely. It's almost like, I feel like astrology really helps with this, because it's almost like, when you are in daily life and you can be swept by, and you can be like, you start to see the news and you start to get like overwhelmed by a lot of things, especially with Jupiter in Gemini having a lot of these like different opinions coming at us and so on. I feel that there is a tendency to kind of get lost in thought. But when you look at the astrology, it feels like there is also structure, like there are also pillars, and there's no coincidence that Saturn goes in the same sign that like Neptune goes, because exactly like in the first year that this happens, like Neptune changes signs every 14 years or so. So like this is a new cycle that we are getting into, and we need some proper rules. I know I'm sounding like such a Capricorn rising, but we do, and actually, as you said, like it's going to take time, because Saturn stays in Aries for about 3 years or 2 years, 2 to 3 years, depending on the specific transit. It's also going to go back into Pisces at some point, but mostly, it's going to be in Aries from now on. And also people who have Saturn in Aries, like myself, they're going to start their Saturn return as well around this time. And people who have Saturn in Pisces, they're going to slowly end their Saturn return period. So Saturn return has a lot to do with this sense of like, again, building something within your life, right? So there is this energy that I feel that, Saturn return people can also feel more grounded around this time, because this is happening so for me personally, because I'm getting closer to my Saturn return, it also feels like there's almost like a grounding of like, okay, we can lift a little bit above, everything that's going on, and we can find, especially because also the North Node is in Pisces. So Pisces has this energy of like spirituality. It has this energy. I've seen a lot of my clients like wanting to make the shift from their full-time jobs to becoming healers, or to like, I've seen a lot of like people being more open towards this right now. So I feel that, first of all, the world needs that right now, but also I do think that leaning into spiritual tools, leaning into, having faith, because that's very Pisces like an energy, are tools that can help us to navigate this. Obviously, the intensity, it's like, especially when it comes to an eclipse, it's important to just like feel it. Like that's the most important thing. We cannot, and if we try to scheme through it, like if we try to just like ignore it, I feel like it's gonna, get worse in the future. So you might as well just like go through it. And that's very Pisces energies, like flowing with, what's happening basically.
Yeah, flow with it. I'm reading a book right now called The Obstacle is the Way, and it's sold millions and millions of copies. I'm sure some folks watching this have read that book. But one of the things I was reading last night was that getting through obstacles or times like these where the intensity may be really high, that we have to watch ourselves and how we assign if something is good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
That instead we should really aim to be as neutral as possible, because when we assign something as good or bad, it kind of puts us in a trap of like, oh, well, this is what I identify as good, and so if I get more of this, then it's good. Or on the flip side, if I have said that or that person or that belief is bad, then anytime I see that, it's creating that bad energy or bad perception, which then gets us like stuck in this loop of scarcity or fear or anger or rage. And so I like what you're saying about Saturn, and like, let's work with the energy of Saturn, because we all have Saturn somewhere in our chart. but working with that energy to also like rise above it, like you said, and find that structure, that grounding. Because Saturn for me is an energy that is like very mature and responsible and asks us to kind of level up ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely Saturn is that way. I mean, definitely Saturn can also be challenging in the sense that it can feel restricting, especially to, some people that maybe they do not really go by specific rules. But when it comes to Saturn, it's not necessarily like always rules being imposed on us, especially since also Aquarius is ruled by Saturn and Pluto is in Aquarius, right? So Pluto in Aquarius, it's not about rules at all. It's about like, just like bringing all of that down and like building our own rules. So there is something about Saturn that's also about like having this ability to create your own rules, so it kind of helps us this year to figure out, as you said, exactly like, what is right and what is wrong, what is right for us, what is, maybe wrong in the sense that what for us, it doesn't make us feel good. And maybe we need some distance from that. But in terms of like overall, the things that are happening, and also with astrology, for example, with Mercury retrograde, I feel like there's a lot of like bad rep or a lot of like fear when it comes to like, Mercury retrograde is coming and so on. And transits are just as neutral as you were saying, right? So transits are more about like, how do we navigate it? What is the lesson that we are, going from here? And when we have this perspective, it helps us to not be so stuck in the emotion of it, but kind of like, I mean, first of all, feel our emotions, but then also like sail through it in a very nice way. And I feel that with Mercury retrograde coming up, I mean, definitely there is going to be this energy of maybe some misunderstandings, like how we're going through this like 3 or 4 times a year. So we're already like quite used to this energy. It's interesting how every time there is almost like a resistance to it. But I think that embracing it kind of helps it navigate better. It's almost like when I go through Mercury retrograde, I know, okay, Mercury retrograde is happening. I need to like double check all of my, like posts. I already know that it didn't happen yet. And I'm already like seeing myself like writing some typos and stuff. So I'm like trying to, so it's like being a little bit one step further. Also with this Mercury retrograde, like usually what happens during Mercury retrograde, but also I feel that because this eclipse is going to be in a like aspect to Uranus, there could be some themes related to either social media or technology, that can come up. So we've seen that during Mercury retrograde, like a lot of the times Facebook, is not working, or Instagram or things like that. So I feel that there can be this almost like a disruptive energy when it comes to that. But in general, I feel that because this is together with Venus retrograde, it's so hard to almost like be, like, okay, this is this one and this is this one. It's almost like this month is like, okay, they're all kind of like blending in together, and all we feel is like a huge intense energy. And it's just about like, okay, what is the tools that help you navigate that, basically?
Yeah, I love that. Social media is interesting. You and I both have big followings on social media, and I've definitely seen the intensity on there and having to work through, what is posted, what's not posted, what are people saying, what are they not saying. There's just a lot of hatred and divisiveness on all different kinds of social media platforms. And I think that divisiveness creates the ability for more leaders to control people. And I think that when we're divisive and we don't like each other, or we want to fight each other, it weakens society, I feel like, because it's us against them. And so, yeah, with Jupiter and Gemini and the two sides, the duality, I think of Gemini as being 2, and Jupiter is very expansive, and that's where it's at. So I think of like Jupiter hitting Gemini, whatever Jupiter touches, I feel like it just makes more of. And so it could make more of that duality, or the two groups. So I like to think about social media and what we post on there. Or if you're somebody in the audience that's listening to this and you're going on and you're commenting on different posts and things, like, is it kind and is it helpful? Because if it's not, and the intensity just keeps building and building and building, what good is that serving? You know, maybe you're like, well, I need an outlet to get it out, or I need to say it to somebody, right? It's like, well, could you take that energy of intensity and funnel it into something else, or something that's productive or helpful? Or because I would never say to somebody like, oh, don't go to that protest, like don't go say what's on your mind, because if that's what you're feeling compelled to do. But I think that it's about considering the energy and asking, what do I feel I need to do with this that could be kind or could be helpful? I'm not sure if that's resonating like with what you're sensing in that energy as well, but I just feel it like ratcheting up. And every day I'm seeing new headlines about protests and people lighting cars on fire. And so, yeah, do you think it's that Jupiter in Gemini? Do you think that has something to do with it?
I mean, first of all, with the intensity of it all, I think it's more like Pluto in Aquarius, because like Pluto in Aquarius, it's like that intense energy. And Aquarius, it's all about like community. So kind of like joining a group or joining a community or a belief that you have. But at the same time, like Pluto in Aquarius is meant to unite us at the end of the day. But until we get there, it can feel very in a lot of places. But then the fact that Jupiter is also in Gemini, like, I feel like it's this combination, because Jupiter in Gemini is all about like words. So it's almost as though like words are weapons right now, so like people are using words to kind of like just put them out there and it's also because Jupiter is in Gemini that we also take words more heavily, I would say, like in the sense that there is also this sense of like, obviously, like I feel that people who choose to comment, when maybe they could also just not comment, they could also just like, stop the video, or they could unfollow, or, there's a lot of other like things that they could set boundaries when it comes to that, but they decide not to, so they decide to like move forward with that without thinking. And then it's also like how we receive that as well, as like content creators, for example, or just like people, who read like the news and so on, like trying to think of like how much space we also give to the words and how much like weight we put on them as well as receiving them, because that's also really important. And also, like, I mean, this is very like more far into, but like Uranus will go in Gemini as well, like at some point, right? So that's going to be like, it's all about like Uranus social media, and Gemini, it's all about like words. So that will be another energy in its own that I feel like has to do a lot with like words being used in different ways, and that's going to be something that in time we're going to almost like get used to. It's like I feel like it's a new age for social media. We're changing the way we're relating to social media in general, and I also feel that when Jupiter goes in Cancer, so Jupiter will only be in Gemini until June. So I feel that then things maybe can start to settle a little bit down. Then it's going to be more about like compassion, or hopefully I hope that it's going to bring, more compassion and more like consideration before, saying something.
You and me both. I hope so. Yeah. So this comment here, literally from Sons of, I can't remember how to say that name. Art of War: Divide and Conquer, or Build and Unite. Yeah. So either divide and conquer, or we come together and build and unite. And so right now it feels very divisive, like we're being set up for some downfall. So let's see here. A couple comments here. Diana's saying, yes, that's true. Jupiter and Gemini bringing up strong words as a blade. Yes. Yes. So then we've got a lot of keyboard warriors who hide behind computers to say things they wouldn't say in person. That is true. That is absolutely true. Let's see. Stacy's saying, have to work on your triggers. Make sure to ground every day. Release energy in some way. Stay in grace and gratitude. Oh my goodness gracious. Well, I think we should look at a few news headlines. On that note, okay, so let's pull up, let's see here. Let's get our news headlines going. And I'll mention these as I bring them up on the screen because I know that they can be very small for those looking at this, especially on their cell phone. But this first article is about how Poland announced that military training was going to be for all men. So I've seen some headlines about this. I'll see some like video clips on TV about it. So what do you think this applies to when it comes to astrology of the military or training requirements for men? So what do you tie this back to?
Mhm. So I definitely tie this with Saturn in Aries, which is going to start soon, because of the fact that Saturn has to do with restriction. So it can have to do with, specific rules that are being imposed by, people who decide things. And then Aries has to do a lot with, it can have to do with war, or it is associated to this energy of like fighting, like fighter. Like usually if you have like a south node in Aries, for example, which is like it can show that you had a past life, for example, as a warrior or a fighter, or it's got this energy of like very fired up. So I feel that when Saturn goes into Aries, it's almost like, that restriction when it comes to this theme. So I definitely see more structure and more rules in relation to anything that's related to the military.
Yeah, and I've heard some other astrologers talk about Neptune going into Aries and Uranus going into Gemini, that those two transits are indications of when we've had war in the past, big war. And neither of those have happened yet with Neptune going into Aries and Uranus going into Gemini. So we still have, like you're saying, more anticipation for headlines around restrictions and war and training and military, even, how some countries are going to build up their military. So yeah, I'm with you. I think this is just the beginning of news stories about military and war, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay, let's pull up the next story. This one it says Trump pulls 400 million from Columbia University, saying it failed to protect Jewish students. So I've seen other headlines too about college campuses and protests and this group versus that group. So I know you just mentioned a couple minutes ago about Pluto and Aquarius and how that could lead to some of this divisiveness. And people absolutely in the United States are very torn on what's happening in our federal government and what leaders are doing, and a lot of the systems that are being dismantled. So when you look at a headline like this, where does that play into astrology?
I mean, definitely it is Pluto and Aquarius, and we've seen more protests since Pluto went into Aquarius, and I feel like that's going to, keep on happening when it comes to that as well. But I also see it very like fitting for the Virgo eclipse. Alongside also Venus retrograde, like there's a lot of layers to this. First of all, because Venus retrograde has to do with money, it has to do with, I mean, Venus in general, it is the planet of money. So retrograde, it can mean that there's like money that are being taken back or out, or there's like a lowering when it comes to that. And then the other one is definitely this Virgo eclipse, which Virgo is actually being ruled by Mercury. Mercury can have to do with anything that has to do with studies, or anything that has to do with like students and university as well. Obviously, there's also like Sagittarius that has to do with that, but Virgo being ruled by Mercury can also have to do with that. So I feel that it is almost like like a build up of that, and a combination of all of those as well.
Interesting. Yeah, that Venus retrograde. And as you said earlier, we're in the shadow of Mercury retrograde, so we're going to have that going on here pretty soon. Then we have Venus retrograde. We have the total lunar eclipse in Virgo. We have the partial solar eclipse in Aries coming. Like, it is a hot month. Oh, gosh. Okay, next headline. So this article, I know you can barely see it, but it's about the tariffs. So I feel like every day, even if I were to pull a tariff article every few hours, I feel like it's just outdated because it changes so much. So the tariffs, there's all kinds of news headlines in the United States about what President Trump is doing, and then other countries that are retaliating with their own tariffs. And so it's caused this big fight over tariffs and different like a different type of war over goods and services and pricing. And of course, the consumer is going to be feeling this to some degree. So tariffs and countries that are fighting each other. Do you think it's that the Saturn Aries that you mentioned, or you think it's something else?
I mean, yeah, definitely it can come in the form of like Aries energy as well, because Aries energy is more about like conflict. So this can lead to like even bigger conflict, especially when Neptune goes in Aries. It's almost like, and that's when I feel like we're going to almost like witness this almost like we're looking like people who don't really know how to make decisions, like kind of play with, these words, or these like, they're almost like pushing the buttons, how I said, right? And then when Saturn goes into Aries, I really feel that some regulations and some rules are going to change around this, and things are going to start to stabilize. So I don't think that they're going to, be so changing so much, but I do feel that this is strongly also Venus retrograde, because there's a lot of themes right now in connection to tariffs, and also when it comes to money, when it comes to possessions, when it comes to like all of these themes that are related to Venus. So there's definitely like a fight about these things. And then now Mercury also going retrograde, it can even, I feel that it's going to get a little bit more intense, in the sense of like, the talks are going to be more prominent around this area. But I also feel that slowly after March, it's almost like we just have to get through March, and then I think we're gonna slowly, the intensity is going to go a little bit down, and on this as well.
We're going to take your word for it that that March, after March, it's going to get better. Okay, let's see what else we have on here. We have a couple more. This article says Afghan women who fled Taliban to study abroad face return after USAID freeze. So there's been a lot of news stories about the US aid freeze and different organizations or people that have been affected by it. So what was it about this article that intrigued you?
Yeah, I mean, I did kind of see a lot of news articles lately that also involve students. For example, I know that also in Serbia there was, like there were protests, student protests, and so on. So I feel that there is a lot of this energy, but the reason why I felt that this was like almost this energy of retrograde, like both Venus and both like Saturn Mercury retrograde, because retrograde is basically when something goes back, so there's almost this energy of like we're going back to like our initial energy, or we're going back in time almost. And with these kinds of news, like sometimes it feels like that, it feels like we're going back in time. It feels like we're almost like also like not just specifically this, but in general, sometimes like we're reliving cycles, of history and so on. So with this energy, it just felt like it is a retrograde, because I think also when I checked like the article, it said that in 2 weeks or so. So that would be like when Mercury is retrograde. So it's almost like, the rights are being like taken back, so it's got that energy of restriction.
Interesting. Yeah. The retrograde energy, one of the words, well, a lot of the RE words. So like redoing, revisiting, revamping, reviewing. So yeah, not surprised, but interesting, this tie back with this news article to the retrograde energy. Makes sense. Thank you for explaining that. And then our last article on here, oh man, this is another one where I swear the headline changes every day about the Pope. So for a while it was, the Pope is really in bad shape in the hospital, and people really on alert for sending prayers to the Pope and being in ailing health. Today, I think there's some news story that's saying that there's talks about the Pope leaving the hospital. So this conclave article is interesting because some people have seen the movie Conclave, which was nominated for an Oscar. Interesting movie. And here we are in this news cycle of will we have to select a new pope? What does that look like? And a major religious figure in the world. So is there something in the astrology that points to religion or spirituality? Is that something with like the Pisces energy?
Yeah, definitely. So this is like so North Node in Pisces. It's like if there was any year to bring this up, I feel like it would be this. So I do think that there is likely that there's going to be changes in this area because Pisces has to do with religion, belief, fate. So with the North Node actually has to do with almost like a purpose, driven event. So it can just be connected to that there is a purpose this year of something changing when it comes to, this area of like religion and fate. And also, I feel that Saturn being at the last degrees of Pisces as well. Usually, like we see right now with the last degrees of Neptune, that there's this like feeling of like fogginess that we're seeing. So also Neptune, being the ruler of Pisces. So Saturn, when it's going to also go like towards the last degrees before it goes into Aries, so that will be like until May. So in May it's going to go into Aries. The last degrees are also going to be felt quite intensely, so there can be some sort of an energy of like a restructuring of some sort of some change when it comes to that. But I think it's interesting because also within this article it talks about like secrecy, and I feel that's very like eclipse energy as well. There's a lot of secrets that can be revealed around this time too.
Yeah, I think we're going to be seeing all kinds of things happening that are going to shock us. And I think some of us will be like, wait, was that hiding there the whole time? And now we're learning about this, whether it's in our own life or in the world. But yeah, I also look at eclipse energy as like shining that flashlight and like the lights suddenly come on and you realize what the heck you were dealing with. So shock and surprise this month as these eclipses activate. Yeah, interesting. So I'm going to have you start shuffling your cards. I think we talked about this before. Yeah. I think we have the card or cards pulled around what we haven't like noticed or seen about the eclipse. Like maybe what's in the dark, like what's in the dark with this eclipse that we need to hear about or know about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like what are the secrets that we...
Yeah, let's see what are the secrets? What are the secrets that we need to know about with these eclipses this month? Ooh, yeah, let's do that. And then while you're shuffling, I'll just remind everybody, if you wouldn't mind hitting the subscribe button, give that thumbs up, click that button too. We'd appreciate it. It lets YouTube know that you like the content and then they show it to more people. So subscribe and click the like button. I'd appreciate it. Okay. Did you get a card that like flew out of your deck?
Yeah, that's how I do it. That's how wait, one more. Just if we have the time. Okay. Ooh, okay. So I got the 7 of Wands, which you can see like from the imagery, it talks about conflict. So it's definitely related to, this energy of conflict that maybe we are not aware of. Like maybe there is some conflict that's going on behind the scenes as well that we are not really having access to as well. But it's the 7 of Wands. It is not a major arcana. So I look at it more like something temporary, maybe something that will be revealed at some point, as well. Like maybe it won't be in the dark for too long, because then we also have the World card, which involves all of us, so it can be like this conflict is being revealed, or this conflict is kind of coming to surface. But this also like kind of, it can be something that like it's about all of us, like includes everyone, I would say. And then with the 8 of Cups, this is an energy of like release, and it can be some sort of like letting go, like maybe a letting go of, I don't know. This is quite interesting. Then we have like the 10 of Swords. So 10 of Swords, I mean, I know the imagery looks like very but the 10 of Swords card has to do a lot with like almost like this feeling of anxiety, so it's got this like almost feeling of anxiety. And with the 8 of Cups, it's like a release. I do feel that this honestly talks about like what we talked about at the beginning about the eclipse, of like being like this release of anxiety or worry around this time. And then we have the Ace of Wands. So that's interesting because like we started off with the 7 of Wands and we're leading towards the Ace of Wands. 7 of Wands being like the conflict, and then the Ace of Wands having to do with like a new thing, like a new chapter that can begin. It's almost like one of these wands. So like one of the conflict can be revealed, or it can be like, brought forward. And it can mark like a new beginning as well with this energy. So that's how I feel it. And this 8 of Cups is also very interesting. It almost makes me think of like a table, and there's like people sitting at the table. And it's almost like, okay, we are kind of watching this energy, or, we're kind of like looking into this energy too.
Yeah, those people are commenting and saying how much they love the cards. Yeah, I appreciate how bright they are and how colorful they are. And what's it called?
The Monday's Tarot. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I think it matches what we were talking about with all the astrology. And I think leading to that Ace of Wands, it's like, okay, so there's conflict, there's intensity, there's, what we're releasing, but ultimately it does get us to that Ace of Wand energy, which can feel like an invigorating, fresh start in some ways. And I think Aries energy can bring that. There's high form and low form of every sign. I feel called to pull, these are cards of destiny, so they're based on a deck of playing cards. But I just want to pull one and read what it says of like what we need to know today. And mine just jumped out, so we'll do that one. Okay. Let's see. I feel inspired. Oh, I got 7 of Hearts. So 7 must be a interesting number for us today. Okay. The heart and the mind together will bring the best results for decisions and actions to be taken at this time. So heart and mind, brain and heart together. If you use one without the other, you may not reach your desired outcomes. If forgiveness is called for, it's your opportunity to take that step no matter what. And acceptance is the key to success. The 7 of Hearts teaches us to communicate from our highest integrity and with true kindness and compassion. If we look deep enough into the eyes of another, we see our own reflection. This is the time to practice this. This card also represents the beauty of life and can draw you in that direction for your career or something that you desire to express at this time. Patience is important. Take an inward journey to receive the clearest direction and knowing. It's a beautiful card, but I think it's perfect. Even that line about seeing ourselves in another, like we are all one. I think the illusion of separation is just that, it's an illusion. And if we're really sitting with ourselves long enough and grounding, like we talked about today, and having, like the card says, patience, and to take it with each day and each breath, we will get through this. And we'll get through it without burning everything down in our pathway in the process. So it's a balance. It's a balance, I think. Yeah.
That was like, I feel like it was very fitting for what we were talking about as well. Also with compassion and like Jupiter in Cancer and so on, and Pisces North Node. And also, definitely also the Ace of Wands that I got, like the last card, I felt like that was like almost like a draw of hope. It's got this energy because it can like show a new beginning. And in terms of like the cards, I feel like some of them are also like more they're feeling colorful, like more red. So that energy is more connected to like our almost like our like energy, our stamina and so on. So I feel that when Aries energy is going to come up, we're definitely going to feel more like in our bodies, we're definitely going to feel more energized, so there's almost this energy of like also spring is coming and so on. So there's like, like waking up, in a way.
I love that. Before we let you go, We know that your website is saturnrevolution.com. Everyone should definitely go check out your work and follow you on social media for more. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with today that you just want to make sure everyone hears?
That's an interesting question. I mean, first of all, yeah, like my website is there, and on Instagram, I'm also Saturn Revolution. Like that's my main social media where you can find me. And I also do readings along like astrocartography and shadow work readings as well. So I go more a little bit in depth when it comes to the chart too. And in terms of like a message, I just feel that like at least from this call, and again, like thank you for having me. I feel like like very energized as well, like towards the end of the call. And I feel like there is this lingering sense of hope. And that's what I have been feeling for these energies. And it's almost like, although, yes, it feels intense, we don't have to necessarily fall for that. Like we have to go through it, but that doesn't mean that we have to like let it discourage us as we go along the way. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Beautiful, beautiful parting words. I hope everyone goes and checks out your work, and everybody that's joined us today from your audience, thank you for also being here. I appreciate it. I look forward to having you back on the show sometime soon.
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah, Larisa, thank you so much. I know it's late there, so I'll let you go, and I'll have a few more words with my audience here, but I hope you have a great night. Get some sleep.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh my gosh, I love her. I'll have to invite her back on the show and see if we can get her back on here. I love her take on, gosh, having a stellium in Capricorn and a lot of Aquarius energy. That is a lot of Saturn. And so I love that her website is saturnrevolution.com. I remember when I was going through like a dark night of the soul several years ago, and I wasn't into astrology at that point. Not really anyway. I'd had a reading somewhere along the way, but I was really, really having a hard time. And I was recommended to go to an astrologer. She has since passed away. And I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know if it's ever going to get better, and maybe some of you can relate to that. You've been in periods of your life where you're like, I can't see the sunlight. And I had that reading, and I remember a lot of that reading was about Saturn. And it felt like I was squished. I felt like I couldn't turn in the right direction, just kept feeling like it was night after night after night. And I share this with you because, and I'm so passionate about astrology. But I remember the astrologer giving me the date of when the energy was going to lift. Now knowing a lot more about astrology all these years later, I appreciate that she was talking to me about a transit. But she said it's going to get better. And she let me know when that transit was going to happen, where it was going to lift. And she was right. And I think we can all turn to astrology and lean into it for guidance and know that every single transit is temporary. Everything in life is temporary. The good, the bad, the neutral, everything is temporary. So I recommend linking up with Larisa on social media. Check out her website and see, if you haven't had an astrologer ever look at your chart, I would recommend it, and especially looking at transits or your progressed chart to see what the heck's going on in your life right now. You might find it helpful, as I felt it helpful. So anyway, I feel like I just needed to share that with you, and I guess give another recommendation for astrology. It's absolutely incredible. Yeah. As Ellen is saying, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. Everything. Yes. And we will get through this. A couple of just quick announcements, and then I'm going to pull our lottery jar winner, which is so cool. What do I have on here? Yes. So Thursday, if you are in my Sacred Signals community, you go to spiritandSparkle.com. spark.com, click on Sacred Signals. I'm going to be taking a look at energy of major events going on in the world. This is where I say all the things I can't say on mainstream social media. So join me on Sacred Signals. I'd love to have you there. So we'll look at like things around stock market, the tariffs, the World War III. I'll see what shows up on Thursday. And if you can't make it to the live Zoom, you get access to the replay as well. So spiritandspark.com, click on Sacred Signals. Let's see, what else do I have here? Yes, the March community class. While you're on my website, click on classes. I have the Eclipse Code workshop coming up. And I would recommend signing up ASAP. I mean, the spots are filling up, but more so when you sign up, you get the guide on how to find this week's eclipse in your chart. And then during the workshop, I'll be going over the March 29th eclipse. And you get the live access, you get the replay, and you name your own price. Literally, like no strings attached. So come to the Eclipse Code workshop. So go over to spiritandspark.com and click on classes to see that one. While you're there, take the free psychic power quiz. I looked at the quiz results the other day. 96% of people that take this quiz find out they do have a psychic ability. The one that has the highest percentage is clairsentience. So over half of the people that take the quiz have clairsentience as their psychic ability, which is clear feeling. So it's 7 quick questions. I'd be really curious to hear what your result is. So that's over on just the homepage of my website. So go check that out. Let's see. I don't think I have any other announcements. So basically, go to my website, click all the things. And if you know somebody that's into this kind of content, have them go over to the website. They can add themselves to my email list. That way they get an email alert on Tuesdays right before I go live with a direct link. So I appreciate you sending your friends and family over. It really does mean a lot to me. So let me go ahead and pull the jar winner. So if you joined late, if you commented on this live stream, you got a bauble in the jar. If I call your name, you have to email me by midnight tonight, and I will put my email address in the comments of this live stream since you have to be here live. And you can email me by midnight tonight, and I will personally pull 12 tarot cards and make you a personalized tarot report for the 12 months. So, and when I pull it, the name on it is going to be what your name is showing up in the chat. So I say that because we've had a couple of snafus with this name calling thing, which is totally fine. Okay, so here we go. Let's do a drum roll. Today's winner is Lorraine Wilbur. Lorraine Wilbur, you are today's chat winner. If you didn't win this week, it's okay. Come back next Tuesday because we're going to do it again. 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And of course, you can always catch the replay on my YouTube channel. But in order to win the report, you got to show up live. So congratulations, Lorraine Wilbur. Send me an email by midnight tonight, and I'll get you your report created. So thank you to everybody who tuned in this week. Share this video with a friend or a family member who could use this insight. And thank you again to my guest, Larisa, SaturnRevolution.com. And again, all of my classes and sacred signals is at spiritandspark.com. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you next week.